I feel like the prophets of the Bible may have been teaching something way, way deeper than religion. I feel like they were tapping into psychological freedom, right? I feel like they tapped into this inner psychological technology, this consciousness technology, and they were able to live it in their time. They were able to let it echo through their being. It wasn't just thought, right? It wasn't just how you could read something and then you project it back. But it also wasn't just like how actors could read scripts and act it out. It was different than that. The intervention of the word, the conscious aspect of the word in its purest form. Take the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Societal pressure. Daniel being strong within himself. Daniel trusting in the higher I am. Daniel said, no, I'm not going to give in. All of that political instability of the time that pushed Daniel to take that inner stance that got him to be amongst lions, right? And these lions could have devoured him. But we get to see that him being in that pure state of consciousness, divine alignment, the fear, right? Because we can relate these lions to the fear, societal pressure, the external factors that summon fear within us. We can relate those lions that were in the den at the time to that. But Daniel being strong within himself, Daniel being in alignment, in the sovereignty, right? So that is a prophet teaching us in the sovereignty. The Bible says by his grace, Daniel was protected. But we also see that that comes with alignment because he stood on truth. Daniel was not going to budge. Daniel was not going to say just because the masses, the numbers, are in alignment with this ideology, I'm just going to succumb to it. Daniel said no, because I know truth within myself. So I'm going to stand on truth. So we can see that Daniel tapped into psychological freedom. He understood that for you to experience external freedom, you must first have that inner clarity, right? Take a look at the prophet Elijah, such an amazing prophet. Elijah, when he was amongst the false prophets at Mount Carmel, I think, Elijah prayed for fire to come down and demonstrate, to come down and provide clarity. We can look at those false prophets as false storylines, false narratives. And we know that in the times that we are in, there are a lot of false storylines, a lot of false narratives that have been projected. But we see that Elijah, being in that higher alignment, was able to call upon fire that brought about clarity, that got to dissolve the illusion. So we can see that knowledge, pure knowledge, transcendental knowledge, exists as this fire that brings about purity, this fire that consumes to transform our minds out of this state of ignorance and to have us fellowship in clarity. So we can see that these prophets tapped into that which we can integrate. This is part of the Integrated Awakening series. So welcome to Frequency in Motion. We can see that these prophets were pure frequency in motion, but they were at a certain level of awareness that was able to get them to bring about clarity in ways that we must have forgot. Look at Yeshua ben Yosef, we bless his name. Yeshua ben Yosef said, if we allow truth to settle in us, this is the knowing of truth. If we allow truth to settle in us, this truth will set us free. That in itself is a consciousness technology that once we internalize it, it is transformative. Tapping into psychological freedom. Daniel teaching us resilience, right? Elijah letting us know that even in the midst of misinformation, we should always allow the clarity that comes from that higher fire of knowledge to bring about the clarity of perception. Even the Apostle Paul, we bless his name. The Apostle Paul said we have to be transformed by the renewal of the mind. That means that once the identity shifts, we can also shift from a lower pattern. We can shift into a higher state. So we can see that before these great individuals that we now call apostles, that we now call prophets, we get to see that a lot of these individuals were actually in alignment. They were tapped into psychological freedom, psychological sovereignty. Even Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, right? All of them tapped into this psychological consciousness technology that was getting them to express not just the verbal aspect of truth, but the practical aspect of truth to bring about clarity. That's the whole point of it, is to bring about clarity. So as you are in motion, you being frequency in motion, and we are looking to integrate our awakening in real time, we must be honest with ourselves. We must be honest with ourselves that we might have been misinformed, and this misinformation might have had us living in modes, in circumstances that require this higher fire of knowledge to bring about the clarity of perception, to bring about that psychological freedom. We must also tap into that inner sovereignty that will get us to stand like Daniel in the lion's den, to be unafraid, to be that one that would stand on truth, even if those around us are going along with the general flow. That is the whole point of frequency in motion. We adapt, but we are also conscious of righteousness. And we know that as we adapt, it has to be in alignment with the mode of righteousness. I mean, what do y'all think? Please leave your comments below in the comment section. As you already know, when we tapping into, our awakening, as we are ascending within ourselves individually, we have to make sure that the foundation of our ascension is solid. That way, collectively, when we start to look at the collective awakening, the collective ascension, we start to see that our foundation is not one which would get us to sink. We're not going to go backwards. As we ascend, we're healing. And we're tapping down into this consciousness technology in the form of words as it is alive. And we're shifting our mind out of that religious state to start to see what was happening in that time in real time, so we can now use terms that are actually applicable. So we don't look at what was happening as something that was far-fetched. We start to see it as that which was made manifest due to alignment with truth. I think we're going to go ahead and cut it at that. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate y'all. Frequency beings out there, stay vibrating high. Stay vibrating high, because you are needed in these times more than you would even begin to imagine. So even if you're not speaking much, just make sure that you're doing everything to have your action be in alignment with truth. Stand like Daniel. Despite the fear around you, stand like Daniel. You got it.